So we're talking about the history of the ketogenic diet. In our last video, we talked about some of the ancient history of ketogenic diet and why the ketogenic diet was talked about at all, okay? And so I wanted to continue that a little bit to bring us a little bit closer to modern times, because I think it's important for us to understand where we started and where we're at now, and some of the key things that happened in the science of this over time, because we can use some of these tricks to get some benefits for our own health and understand why we had the ketogenic diet developed in the first place, why it fell out of favor, and why it's suddenly back again, okay? So one of the things that happened, as we mentioned in the previous video, was we had the ketogenic diet was developed for epilepsy. Okay, so people who had seizure disorders, they were treated with medically with their nutrition. So you had a starvation diet or a ketogenic diet where you reduced the number of calories, you increased the amount of fat, and that helped reduce the number of convulsions or seizures that this person had. Now, one of the challenges with the ketogenic diet was it was extremely hard to follow for a lot of people. It was labor intensive for the families, and it was hard to make palatable for small children. So kids, trying to get them to eat that much fat, okay, we worry about it nowadays, but they didn't have those processed fats back in the early 1900s as they do now, as many different types of fats as they do now. So it was challenging to make foods that had that much fat that could actually be eaten and tasted okay. All right, so this was one of the big challenges. And when you were faced with a whole lifestyle change, a way of cooking and eating versus a couple of medications, suddenly it was easier to take those medications for seizures. Now, in the 1960s, something else happened. The research was still going on about ketosis and trying to find ways to mimic ketosis from starvation and ketosis from this ketogenic diet using other substances so that you got a more robust ketosis without having to be as hungry or without having the same restrictions as the ketogenic diet, the pure ketogenic diet that we'll talk about later on. And what they found was, researchers found that the medium chain triglycerides, MCTs, okay, coconut oil, you heard about that? Okay, that's one of the big fads that's been out recently as well, coconut oil, and this is one of the reasons that I've talked about coconut oil in the past too, is the medium chain triglycerides. They found that those medium chain triglycerides actually made your body make more ketone bodies per weight of that fat than any other long chain fat that you could eat in your diet. So that was actually a way of getting higher ketosis without having to be as extreme in ketosis or in starvation. All right, so that was obviously a benefit, and medium chain triglycerides were easier to digest, and they were actually pretty palatable. So you could eat them, you could put them on foods, and they didn't taste bad, and they weren't awkward to use. All right, but at the same time, in 1962, another thing happened that kind of started to tear away again at this idea of using nutrition for seizure disorders. So again, people were still using this as the potential for treatment for seizures, but nobody really talked about it as a weight loss method, okay? But in 1962, sodium valproate was discovered by Pierre Aymard, another French doctor. Okay, so the French are doing great work on seizure disorders, and this guy discovered another seizure medication. So now we've got at least 3 medications to treat seizures versus a dietary restriction or a whole lifestyle change towards a ketogenic diet. So again, there's the easy button for people. They've got this medication that they can use to treat this condition, and so ketosis again is starting to kind of fall off a little bit more. Okay, now in 1971, but it hasn't gone away completely. 1971, a neurologist by the name of Peter Huttenlocher. Peter Huttenlocher in 1971 published in the Journal of Neurology an article talking about using those MCT oils to create a modified ketogenic diet. Okay, now they were using this idea that they would boost the ketosis with those MCT oils to get a more robust ketogenic response, okay? Now, the nice thing about this was, because it was a modified diet, not only was it more palatable because of those MCT oils, the medium chain triglycerides, but it allowed you to take more carbohydrates and still get the same effect. In fact, you could take as much as 3 times more carbohydrates with this diet. So he talked about using 60% of your calories from MCTs and then carbs and protein, and you could take 3 times as much as the regular ketogenic diet in carbohydrates, which meant instead of 15 to 20 grams of carbohydrates per day, you could take as much as 45 to 60 grams of carbohydrates per day and still be in ketosis potentially using the MCT oils. Well, this is great, okay? Suddenly it becomes a little bit easier to do the ketogenic diet, but unfortunately we've got all these medications that are out now that people can use, and there's a lot of marketing behind them to push the sale of these medications, and people are demanding them because they're a lot easier to do than having to get special foods or prepare special things or change your lifestyle dramatically. All right, so you can see that there's this progress. Things are improving over time, and people are learning more about it, but it's also becoming less popular because there are other alternatives to it over that time. All right, so we're going to be talking about more things in the history of it, but we're going to get into what is ketosis, what are ketone bodies, and what is the ketogenic diet, and how does it work, and is it right for you in some of our next videos. Hope you liked this video, and as always, if you liked it, please share it and like it, and check out silenceyourfatgene.com for more videos like this, and we'll see you at the next video.